right, welcome back to Paper Bird, everyone, all our viewers on Instagram Live, and we're going to upload this onto the YouTube later so that we can have these videos for you to watch later. So we are joined today by the amazing Briony Stewart.
Hello.
And we're going to hear a bit about Briony's work and what she's working on at the moment. So I'm going to pass you over to Briony and she's going to talk you through some stuff.
Yeah, so some of you know me, some of you maybe don't. I'm an author and an illustrator, which means I'm really lucky I get to do both jobs, writing stories and illustrating books. So some of you might know the Kimiko and the Dragon books that I wrote and illustrated. And there's a bunch of books I've illustrated here. This is my newest book, and I thought I'd talk a little bit about Trouble in the Surf, and then we'll do some drawing, and I'll show you some of the cool things about it that nobody knows. So Trouble in the Surf is a historical picture book, and the weird thing about it, I was thinking about it today, is, right now, for the first time in whoever knows how long Bondi Beach is actually closed, and actually over 100 years ago it was actually illegal to swim at Bondi Beach or any beach in Australia, which is such a strange thing when you think about it, because swimming and going to the beach is such a big part of Australian culture. So this is set in 1907 with these two characters, Charlie and Rupert, and they're some of the first people to really start going to the beach for fun. Their parents probably never went to the beach for fun, and these guys are going to the beach for fun, but people weren't very good at swimming back then. So this is a story about what happens when they get into some trouble in the surf. Now, should I read the story? I won't read the story because
you guys can.
You guys can, yeah. What I'm going to tell you about is the stuff that you don't know just from reading the story. So I did the illustrations for this book. It's written by Stephanie Owen Reeder, who is a really good author at picking really interesting little historical things. This is a true story. These characters were real people, and this event happened, and it kind of changed things forever because of this time and the events around here. We now have the first and oldest surf lifesaving club in the world at Bondi Beach. So when I was illustrating this book, I had to do a lot of research, and I had a lot of historical photos that were given to me to use to sort of get information about what people were like back in 1907 living in Australia, what they wore and the places that they went. And photography was new back then, just like swimming at the beach was a whole new idea as well. And so the photographs, there's not a lot of them, and also they're very stiff, because back when people took photos in the olden days, it took a really long time to take a photo, so you'd have to stand really, really still, because if you moved, the photo would be blurry. But I wanted to see what it would have been like, the sounds and the movement and the colours of that time. So I couldn't use the photos that I was given of what things were like in 1907. I actually had to look at something else. And so I decided to look at the paintings that were painted at that time. And so here you can see I've got a collection of paintings, and these are paintings done by artists who were some of the first sort of Australian artists painting in a sort of international style called Impressionism. And this is Australian Impressionism, because Impressionism was big and everybody knows about Monet and stuff, but there were a lot of other artists like Arthur Streeton and McCubbin, and they were doing these paintings of where we live. They were paintings of Australia. But what you can see about the paintings from this time is they're not trying to be really detailed photographs, because photography had just been invented. They were trying to capture something different. They were trying to capture the light and the colour and the movement, which is perfect for me because that's what I wanted to know. What did people and what did life look like back in 1907? So when I was creating the artworks for my book, and I've brought some here, I decided to use both things. So I used the photographs to help me capture a lot of the details of the time. So maybe this is a good one. You can see here I've got the characters, I've got all the details of the types of clothes they were wearing. The parasols were my favourite. The women's clothes were my favourite as well. Well, this one here, you can see some of the funny old bathing costumes that people used to wear. So I did these really detailed pencil drawings to create these artworks. And then to add the colour, I decided to do it a little bit more like the Heidelberg School of Art, which is those Australian Impressionist painters that were creating those amazing paintings. So this is the painting that I've done to go with this drawing.
Wow, it
so
really
you can
does look
see,
impressionistic, doesn't it?
Yeah, so you can see what I've done when I'm painting, and maybe you guys could try this if you do some painting, especially if you've got some nice thick paints like acrylics or gouache paint, is to try to do it patchy. Don't worry too much about all the little details. Think about the colour and the sky and the water. So that's what I did. I painted all of the paintings in this sort of impressionistic style. And then, as you can see, I haven't actually got the faces and everything on the characters because I drew them separately. And so what I did, this is my sneaky little cheat that I've used. And this is where, luckily, I don't live in 1907. I live in, 2020. And so I've got technology on my side. So here you can see, I'll zoom in to make it bigger. This is one of my pencil drawings. And then it was scanned for me. And this is one of the paintings that I've drawn that was also scanned for me. And I can do this magic thing where I put the two together.
Wow.
And suddenly the lines are on top of the painting. And so this way for me felt like a good way to sort of capture the mood of the time through the artwork of the time, but also enough details for it to still be an illustrated book that told a story. And just while we're talking about telling stories, obviously the main story, if you get this book, is one that you can discover for yourself. But there's a whole lot of other little stories, and this is something I think a lot of illustrators do, is we really think about all the other little characters in the story. So starting from this page in this book, it's really important because a lot of the people that you see here getting off the tram, this mother and this son and this man who's got a newspaper from this boy and the newspaper here, it's actually important, these characters. And so later on, when you see the beach, you see the man with the newspaper again, and then other characters, these people waiting here, these people here. And what I've actually done is I haven't just made the story of my two main characters important, but in lots of little ways, the stories of all the other characters in the background are really important too. So, especially towards the end when they all start to come together, you can see them there. And I'll let you on a little thing. The man here with the newspaper that we saw in the beginning, at this point somebody's slapping him on the back. They're so happy, and he's dropped his newspaper down here, which sort of explains how, in the end, our character Charlie ends up with the newspaper in his back pocket. And I won't tell you any more, but that newspaper is a clue as to who Charlie actually is, because he actually grew up to become someone super famous in Australian history. But I'll let you research that. Yeah. If you look up...
well, they need to read the book.
But, so quite interesting. So I had a lot of fun making that book. And so a lot of people look at that kind of detail. And I'll quickly maybe draw one of the characters from the book here now. So I'll draw, obviously Charlie and Rupert would be easy, but I said I really love the ladies in this book with I loved their outfits. They had, hats with these sort of big flowers on them. And the thing I loved most about them was what they wore and the dresses, because there was so much fabric. I could really sort of just make them into some big billowy shape, and you can imagine the wind is just blowing these dresses So it kind of made it easier. I didn't really have to draw their legs, which was good. And
what kind of materials are you using there?
So this is just pencil, and the detailed parts of these pictures were also just drawn with just a regular pencil. I've chosen a chunky one today just because it might be a bit easier to see online. So I loved drawing a lot of the background characters for this story. And I spent a lot of time with the details, and then also some shading as well, which is quite important, and trying to come up with characters that had a certain amount of sort of movement, so they felt like not like stiff photographs that we see from 1907, but a little bit more like real people who once lived in a certain historical time, just like we are doing right now. I'm sure people are going to write history books about us one day. So it might look like, whoa, you know, Briony, you're really good at doing these detailed drawings, but I thought I might go back a little bit because people always ask me about how I started drawing and how I started writing stories.
And if anyone wants to ask any questions as we go along, just write a comment and I can put them to Briony.
Yeah, so I thought I would start really basic because obviously, you know, people, I think it's always really strange. They say, oh, you know, you're so lucky you're born with that talent. And I'm like, well, I wasn't really born with any talent. I didn't come out of my mum holding a pencil saying, I can draw. It's something that I really enjoyed doing. And it wasn't because I was learning art at school. Even before I was at school, I enjoyed drawing because to me, it was a bit of a game. And so I thought I might actually show a game to everyone that I actually played when I was younger. And I still actually play it today with a lot of other writer and illustrator friends, and it's a game called Mr. Squiggle. And this is a really great game. If you're the kind of person you're not really sure what to draw, and you just want to have some fun with drawing and not try to draw something realistic or draw something in particular. So I'm cheating a little bit here because you kind of need someone else to help you. So you get a friend, I'll pretend to be the friend, to draw a couple of shapes for you. Not really thinking about it, just a couple of shapes. A squiggle. And then your job is to try and turn these shapes into some kind of picture. And it's a really, really fun game. So, you know, I might, this one looks like it could be a good person here. And I'm just going to start. I have no plan. I'm just going to start drawing a character, and maybe this character could be holding something here, a ribbon maybe, that could be a ribbon, and maybe, oh I know, maybe this could actually be some kind of wand. I don't know if you've done this before where you've made like a bubble wand. Maybe this could be some kind of bubble wand. This could be some bubbles in weird shapes. And here's my character with a bubble wand creating some amazing large weird shaped bubbles. Anyway, you could totally play this game. And the more you play it, the more you start to come up with some really weird things. Sometimes the drawings will be really fun, or you'll be really impressed with yourself. Sometimes they'll just be ridiculous or rubbish, and that's kind of hilarious too. So I love playing games like this where it's not about drawing anything in particular, it's just about trying to solve a problem, really, and you're just trying to figure out how you can turn these weird shapes and lines into some kind of drawing. And so because drawing was always fun like that for me, I did it a lot. And when you do something a lot because you love it, you start to get good at it. And so that's how I really got into drawing. I have to say, writing for me, probably in a kind of similar way. So if you're more of a writer than an illustrator, and you want to do a game that's a little bit like this, what you could do, and I did this a lot when I was younger, when I started writing just because I liked to write. Sometimes I would just go around and I would collect objects, or really I'd probably just look at them, but today I've collected them. And I would try and think of how they could be a story. I found this in James Foley's studio. Now I've touched it, he's probably going to have to wash it with antibacterial stuff. Sucked in, James. But you know, I might find this and I might think, you know, it might just make me start thinking about what it would be like if I suddenly woke up in some kind of prehistoric time. Or what if creatures like this started roaming around these empty streets of Fremantle at the moment? It gets my imagination firing and I start to ask questions. Or, you know, what if you were so tiny that you could build a house inside of a pine cone? Where would that pine cone be? You know, would it just be sitting in a park somewhere? What kind of views would you have? Who would you be watching? What kinds of things would you have to worry about if you were that little living inside a pine cone? These, I have no idea. Maybe these are the rocks from some other kind of planet. Imagine if you went to a beach that had, instead of sand, just had colourful rocks like that. I wonder what kind of planet that would be. Or this rock. I found this one. It's pretty cool. Maybe if you pick it up, you get 3 wishes. But it's not just good enough to just start writing about what if I picked up a rock and I got 3 wishes. It's really important to ask questions. I think that's where I became a writer. Long before I was actually writing things down on paper, was I really loved to just think about things. So, you know, if you had 3 wishes and this was some kind of magic rock, really think about what would those wishes be? What could you change? What could you do? Or what other kind of powers could this rock have? What kind of disastrous things could happen if you wished for something with a rock? What if everybody wanted this rock? What would you have to do to try and make sure nobody else could get it? Because maybe it's not such a good thing to have wishes. I don't know. But if you are a writing kind of person, maybe that's something you could do, a game you could play, collect some objects around the house and really start to think about them and ask as many questions as you can, because that's how you start to build a story. I always find if you have somewhere to start, like a few squiggles on a page or a few random objects that you decide you might start to think about, your brain starts going and thinking, and the more questions you ask, the more you just start to answer those questions, and answering those questions kind of builds up a story.
Cool. And to finish, what are you working on now?
So, I'm working on something really quite different from this detailed, historical, true story. Although in some ways I'd say all of my stories are a little bit true. This story I'm working on is called We Love You, Magoo. And Magoo is a really silly dog, and it's based on my dog, who is actually a lot worse than Magoo in the book, but in ways that I didn't think I could write about in a book. So Magoo, my silly character, unlike this really detailed one, is all about not being too detailed and being really, really quick. So this was really hard for me, a challenge for me to see how quickly I could draw a character and draw a dog character. So here is Magoo. And the whole point with his style is he has to be quick and he has to be messy. So that's Magoo. And he is the character for my new book, which will be coming out instead of September. And he's really silly, and he's been so much fun to draw. And he's a really good character. If you want to try and look at emotion and body language, what I do if I want to draw a sad Magoo, I think of like a sad shape. So I think hunched over, kind of sad. So I'll probably draw a shape like that. And then imagine his head is sort of there, and his eyes, maybe he's looking up, and his ears are not up in the air, they're kind of down, looking sad. Maybe his hands are out here, and his body's here. and his tail is not wagging, it's all sad. And I'll draw him looking kind of sad like that. I don't know if your dog ever does that pose, but my dog does, usually when he doesn't want to come inside and I'm trying to tell him to come inside. So that's fun too, see how quickly and silly you can draw a character. If I'm drawing an excited Magoo, I think, what's an excited kind of pose? If I've got arms, dogs don't have arms, I'd be like, yeah! So how can I show that with Magoo? Well, of course, I would probably show that with his ears. Obviously, you know, when you're really excited, your mouth is open. He's got a tongue that comes out of his. Your eyes are really open because you're excited. You're like, wow! And he doesn't have hands, but he has these ears that kind of can stand right up and look crazy and excited. So that's another fun thing to do with characters as well, is to try and get them to show different emotions. And sometimes it's really fun just to draw quick, silly shapes and lines as well, and quick, silly characters. And, you know, these are very different styles, but it's all about telling a story. And Magoo's story is so wacky and so silly and quick and messy. It has to be like that in the illustration, quick and wacky and messy. And this story is different because it's a detailed story. It's historical. There's layers of information and history and interesting facts in this story. So I felt like this story needed layers and detail, because more things to look at, more things to think about, more different things for you to go away and research and find out more about history as well.
Awesome. We're going to put some of the sketches that Briony's done today up on our website so that you guys can download them and colour them in, or
and I've got a really fun activity to go with these ones, some paper dolls, and I've got a boy and a girl with all the different historical clothes that they would have worn, with information about that as well. And so I'll put a link up for that as well, so that you can cut them out and make them at home.
Awesome. And are there teaching notes? I know they're normally for teachers, but in this kind of circumstance that we find ourselves in, can parents and kids download teaching notes on books?
Yeah, there should be a whole lot here. The National Library of Australia are the publishers of this book, and this book actually already has some interesting history at the back. Which is a really good little platform to leap off to start to look at different other aspects of the story, including, I should add, who's not in this story. Because when I created the characters that are in this story, you know, I always think of Bondi Beach as being a really diverse
Sorry everyone,
place.
I've just flipped over.
And of course, we don't see a lot of cultural diversity on the beach here. And that's reflective of what was happening at the time. I couldn't draw it any other way. But it's interesting to look at these things as well, whose story is being told and whose story is not being told as well in a book. So
there's lots of stuff that kids can be doing at home with the storybooks that our local authors and illustrators have written, and we're so pleased that Briony and yesterday James Foley and the day before Maddie Mitchell have been able to come into our Paperbird studio while we can, and to be able to share their books with you guys at home. And we hope to continue this series, even if we need to take it into people's home studios, so that we can keep in contact with all of our local authors and illustrators during this lockdown time, and so that everyone keeps safe. So everyone stay home and keep safe, and we'll be here with you telling you stories, and you can phone us or email us anytime. So thanks, Briony.
Thanks for having me.
See you later.
See ya.